Hello, guys. I'm Joe Banks, your host of Let's Talk About It. Hopefully, today, Antoine Beeks, our co host, has got things worked out, and we'll see or hear from him today. Again, though, my name's Joe Banks. I'm your host of Let's Talk About It. We're here every week on Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. talking about issues in the community. As you know, this show allows me to get a chance to know you, the community, and you a chance to know me in my run for Hennepin County Sheriff. So once again, I want to thank everybody for joining in and tuning in and chiming in as you like to. Remember that all comments can be put in the bottom line there, the box, or you can request to be brought on and we'll bring you on and talk to you live about some of your questions or comments. We simply ask that everyone respect everybody's comments and that there's no wrong question. Now, with that being said, as you know, we start every week with the backpack. We start milling in that, so we'll kick that off right here. That backpack consists of making sure that you have your driver's license or insurance with you in the vehicle at the time of driving. Make sure you keep it above the visor so it's easily accessible. And remember to stay calm and let the officer go to his spiel. Same thing if you're walking home or somewhere and you're stopped by law enforcement, remember to make sure you have your ID or driver's license with you. Present it to the officer up on request. Stay calm, keep your hands where they can be seen, and as always, get home safe to your family. Got a little bit of information on to get out for you today, so let's get going right away with this stuff. First off, we want to make sure that we're sending condolences still out to the families who lost loved ones in last year's shootings. We've had quite a few since then. And so we don't want to forget about the children over in North Minneapolis that were killed. Trinity, who was 8 years old, and Anya, who was 10 years old, along with Davion. I'm sorry, Anya, who was 6 years old, along with Davion, who was 10 years old. As you know, the young child, Anya, is also the granddaughter of peace activist KG Wilson. So we're asking still that, folks call the www.crimestoppers.org. That's www.crimestoppers.org. Go to that website or call 1-800-222-8477. That's 1-800-222-8477. Or you can reach out to Minneapolis Violent Crime Division at 612-673-2941. That's 612-673-2941 with any information that could lead to the arrest of these individuals. Also, in case that doesn't strike you, morality doesn't kick in, there's still also $185,000 reward for information leading to the prosecution or arrest of those individuals. It's a tragic thing when we lose people in general. When you lose children, it's that much more impacting. So it's important that we get that information out. Real quickly, condolences out to the families who have lost loved ones and who are at this point grieving from the loss of the young man who was shot and killed at the Rich South High School in Richfield, as well as the individual that was also struck and is fighting for his life. So we want to make sure that that goes out and is not forgotten about. Also, again, it just brings up the concern that we've talked about in the past with gun violence in the community. And we just want to make sure that, the community is paying attention out there. We want folks to know that we're hearing you. Real quick today, also, there was some information out there that was a young man who was shot and killed by, sounds like the Minneapolis violent offender team, who was in the process of serving a warrant on someone suspected of a homicide. So I'm sure the facts will come out in that in time to come, and we'll address that when it comes along. There's also been a halt on the three officers involved in the George Floyd trial who were in federal court due to one of those guys testing positive for COVID. The courts have put things on hold until Monday. So that's the update on that information. It's also coming out. Ex-Sheriff Rich Stanek, former Sheriff Rich Stanek of Hennepin County, has now announced that he's running for governor as well. So we expect to see a little more coming out about that. Ironically enough, today the current sheriff, Dave Hutch, has announced that he doesn't intend on seeking re-election this year in the election. So for those of you guys who know, yes, I am still running for sheriff. Um, my name is Joseph Banks. Go to my website at banksforsheriff.com. Check me out, find out information about me. That leaves three of us in the race. For some reason, I noticed that I didn't get as much press as everyone else, but we're going to go ahead and do a couple of press releases to kind of change that. So, it's important that we understand what's kind of at stake here. This is all about changing the community for the positive and making things better. I thought it was a good step on the part of Dave Hutch to go ahead and decide not to move forward in this election. And we wish him all the luck in his future endeavors. So, when we're talking about, police reform is one of the big parts that we've been talking about here in moving forward with the campaigns and kind of what each person wants to see done in the community or what they expect to do moving forward in the community. We'd love to get your opinions about that, kind of some of the things you would like to see happening in the community and things that you want to see going on in the community moving forward for law enforcement. My philosophy moving forward is that we're going to have to work hard to gain the trust of the community, work together with the community, and have a few things in place. And when I say have a few things in place, that starts simply with this. Let's make sure that we're assigning deputies to each police department to ensure that we're getting real-time information from those deputies reported back to the sheriff himself. We want to make sure that we're having insurances requirements for the officers to offset some of the cost of incidents that are being passed on to the citizens. It would be similar to the insurance that we require doctors to have in case of malpractice suits. So it's very important that we're getting that information out, and then also making sure that folks know exactly where they can go in order to have access to the sheriff department in terms of having to file complaints, making sure police departments aren't investigating their own use of force issues, things like that. And like in the case of Terrence Franklin, where Minneapolis was investigating their own use of force issue there in the shooting death of Mr. Franklin. So it's high time that we have someone in office that will stand up for the people, not just go along and get along and keep your head down, business as usual, but explain to people exactly what it is that the sheriff does, why he does what he does, and hold people accountable. And that's what I expect to do as your sheriff. So I'm going to ask that you make sure you go to my page. We're a grassroots campaign. We definitely need your donations every week to keep us in the race. We need your volunteer efforts to come out and help us get out flyers, get the word out, things of that nature. And we definitely want to be out in the community as we already are, making sure that we're getting the word out to the community about, what their needs are and how we can address those. I'm constantly out here and about, dealing with people who are fighting opiate addictions, depression, homelessness. And, one of the big things that I hear a lot is that, people just don't hear me or they don't see me. And so we want to make sure that those folks know that the community hears and see you when we're out there. And, a lot of times people think that, dealing with the homeless or people who have addictions is not necessarily a law enforcement job, but it really is. It's a part of that community oriented policing that we talk so much about. And that's about, hey, just taking the time to stop and talk to people and see if they need help. find out if we can refer them to services, even if we don't always have the answers. I'm really big on the PARI program, which is Police Assisted Recovery Initiative. And what that consists of basically is that cops are finding ways to get people the help that they need and match them up with their services they need in lieu of arresting people who are struggling with opiate addictions. And so we really have to get in front of that. And most importantly, finding ways to connect with the youth in our community, so that we can prevent some of the violence that we're seeing in the communities. As you know, right now, there's over 600 carjackings last year alone in the Minneapolis area. And so one of the big things we want to do is address those issues by meeting them head on. But a good chunk of those individuals responsible for those situations are juveniles. And so we can definitely lock them up, but we want to make sure that we're reaching them before it gets to that point, right? And as we know, we can't arrest our way out of this situation. So it's important that we're getting out in the community, getting to know the people, and dealing with what's happening with them and where they are, right? We need more youth programs. We need more community-orientated programs that are working with the kids. We need families being able to get help and identify problems in their household through either law enforcement assistance or other social services that will help them to overcome those issues. So just so we know that in law enforcement we care about the people, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that care about law enforcement, but people have gotten a bad taste in their mouth based on some of the actions, and so we got to make sure that we're doing things differently. We don't ever want there to be a situation like George Floyd again, where the police are in the middle of the roadway choking someone out or asphyxiating them until they pass away. And so we want to have protocols in place to stop that. And the way to do that is through transparency and observation and accountability. And so we got to make sure that our community is aware of what laws they have in place and what policies they have in place, and what are their accesses to either change some things that have not worked and put in some things that could work. We have a situation where Minnesota is ground zero for the death of George Floyd, and I say death lightly because we all know that George Floyd was murdered. But in light of that, we want to make sure that there's some policies or laws in place that reflect what happened to Mr. Floyd. And so we have to move forward with that change, right? For whatever reason, like I said in the past, we have over 12,000 cops in Minnesota, less than 250 are African American. And so we have to look to make sure that the departments are reflected in the community and that we're getting people from the community to apply for those jobs. And so if you're out there, even if you don't kind of have a full understanding of what it is that the sheriff does, make sure you're getting involved. Make sure you're definitely getting involved. Find out what it is the sheriff should be doing, right? Make sure that the sheriff is holding the police departments accountable, in our agencies, because we need to have cops who care about the people, right? Show people respect. And I'm always screaming, is this an arrestable moment or is this a teachable moment? And that's a big part of what law enforcement is, because we have discretion or authority. So we want to make sure that people understand that even though we could arrest you, we may not have to arrest you. And so this is a big piece, because when dealing with our juveniles, this kind of decides whether or not that juvenile is going to have a felony, right, moving forward, or if they're going to get, kind of a slap on the wrist or deferred to services. And it's important because we know that if juveniles have felonies on their records at young ages, then they can't get housing, they can't get employment, and they definitely can't get education. So it's important that we're addressing these issues to handle the children and our youth a lot better. And this is not reinventing the wheel. This is something that we've already been doing in more affluent communities. And so we need to do it more in our communities. We need to be looking for ways not to arrest our kids, but to hold them accountable. And so we need to work with families to identify those problems in their household. If you have kids that are young kids and they have guns, you need to call those kids out. Make sure that we're getting those guns out of those kids' hands, because that's an important piece. That gun violence, right? Make sure you know where your kid is at night. Make sure you know who he's hanging out with. These are all important things that we need to be making sure that we're taking care of in the community. So just remember that, when you're thinking about, how do we stop this crime? It definitely starts in the home, right? We have to teach parents to teach their children to love themselves. And again, once they love themselves, then they'll love their parents. And once they love their parents, then they'll go ahead and move into a situation where they're working it out into the community, so that we're loving the community, right? That broken window theory. If we make sure that my neighbor's window doesn't stay broken, or my window doesn't stay broken, then we'll notice when a window is broken. So it's important that we're getting this information out to people in the community, and that we're talking, right? We need to be coming together and talking, having conversations, but we don't want to organize and be angry. We want to organize with a plan to follow through. We want to follow through on that plan, and we need the right people in place to make sure those actions are carried out. So that's a very important piece moving forward in the community to address those things that we want to see better in our community. So one of the big things about being the sheriff is making sure that we're not just showing up for photo ops, but we're actually getting into these departments. And Hennepin County has 36 police departments. Other cities that don't have police departments are being patrolled by the sheriff. So we want to make sure that we're supporting the community as a whole, right? Even though we know that there's racism and things that are happening and use of force in Hennepin County, in Minneapolis, there's also other cities in which these issues of mistrust, abuse of power, and racism occurs, in these surrounding cities. And so that's the big thing that we have. And here's another thing that I do want people to understand. If we want to change things, we have to get involved. You have to say something. And it doesn't mean I have to get a fist, be angry, and shake a fist, but it does mean that we have to organize, figure out how to make a bill become a law, get with our legislators, get with our community leaders, and bring about some change. Now, remember, Martin Luther King didn't unite color. Where Martin Luther King united was morality, people's understanding that this shouldn't be done this way. And this is what he meant when he said injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So we have to empower people through clarity, right, and unity, and moving one direction together. And this is what we need to have happen in order to bring about positive change. So that's what we need to be doing. So real quick here, I see that we're getting to the top of the hour. So let's get with the backpack. Those who are not understanding what the backpack is, let me tell you what that backpack consists of. It means making sure that when you leave out the door, you have your driver's license and insurance with you. All right. Make sure that you have, put that above the visor when you're heading out to get in the car. Make sure it's easily accessible. Anybody that doesn't understand that, or who needs more clarification on that, let me tell you, is really important, because how many people are stopped in law enforcement and they feel like, the police are over the top. Remember, it's about safety. So that backpack, what we want to teach you with that backpack is when you got the insurance and the license above the visor, it's easily accessible. There's less chance you can be accused of wanting to reach for a weapon. Same thing when you're walking down the street. Make sure you got the ID, your driver's license with you, so it's easily accessible. If requested, you can present it. Keep your hands where you can be seen. Stay calm, and remember, as always, get home to your loved ones. Just a quick recap, today Sheriff Hutch announced that he don't intend to move forward in the November election based on, you, the community. I want to give you that credit. I want to say that you, the community, actually brought forth enough, stress, pressure, if you would, to give him some consideration about not moving forward based on his actions of driving while impaired at 126 miles an hour, and rolling his squad car. So, I mean, that's important because, again, yet again, and I'll say it again, the community brought pressure and it was able to bring about change. And that's exactly what we're talking about, being prepared to hold people accountable, getting involved, bringing that pressure. Remember, these are public servants, and so they work for the community. And when they're not doing something, there's no one above the law. We have to hold people accountable. We have to have that transparency. I want to see more people involved. I was happy to see this past year that, the citizens of Minneapolis voted not to defund the police department. They decided to keep their police department in place. And the message they basically sent was, yes, we know we need the police, but we want a more professional officer, right? We don't want people that are going to be disrespectful and don't care about the people and who are only looking to make arrests. So I think that message went across. Unfortunately, in the process of that, Chief Arredondo has retired. We now have a new interim police chief. And so, we want to make sure that, we're making some positive changes still within the police department interior structure to hold people accountable. So I'm hoping that, moving forward, that the sheriff will be more involved. If I'm elected, I intend to be more involved, and I intend to make sure that I'm, more involved with what's happening on a day-to-day basis in the city of Minneapolis Police Department, along with other police departments throughout the county. And I think what it really comes down to is we have to make sure that throughout the entire county, we have a uniform way in which we're getting things done. And we do have a point of contact for each agency from the sheriff department, so we're getting real-time information. We're still waiting to find out exactly what were the facts that happened today with the SWAT team who was involved in a shooting, a homicide suspect who was shot and killed. And so I'm sure more facts will come out today. There was an incident also yesterday of a young kid who was shot and killed, along with one other kid who was shot and wounded in the Richfield High School. So we want to get more information on that and find out how we can support folks on that. And of course, we're still looking for information on the children that were shot in Minneapolis and killed. So it's important that we stay in front of this thing, and that as a community, we're talking about what that looks like for us and how do we fix and solve these crimes. Remember, there's always been more community members than police. We know what's happening in our neighborhoods. You know what's happening with your children. And if they're involved in gangs or guns or drugs, it's your job and responsibility as a parent to make sure that you're definitely aware of that. And let me say this, moving forward, if I'm elected sheriff, I really want to find out why we haven't determined how all of these guns are getting into our community. They're coming from somewhere, guys. And I just haven't seen enough proactivity from our law enforcement community, nor demand from the community that someone figure out how these young kids are accessing so many guns that we're supposed to be keeping track of. Where are our federal agencies and partners that are supposed to be helping us to track down this stuff and figure out where it's coming from? And why is it that we're more concerned when someone does a mass shooting in a school, but we're losing mass lives every day in African-American communities, and there isn't any march? I understand that Black Lives Matter is coming out on behalf of violence when it comes to officers and the community members, but in my mind, all lives matter. And so we have to come up with some type of movement program that will address the issue of Black on Black violence so that we can address this, because at this point, we've lost more people of color through gun violence now than we did in Vietnam War. And so we have to address this. And it's not just happening in the Minneapolis area. It's happening like this in cities of color around the United States. And we have to find a uniform way to address this. It's not okay that it's a popular thing now for our people to run around here with rest in peace shirts on a regular basis. I was so disheartened to see that we're now having designer caskets done, right? With video screens inside them and digital screens and spray paint on the outside. Listen, it cannot become a way of life for us to be okay with killing people on a daily basis. We have to address that. That cannot be a way of life. We have to figure a way to address what's really going on. Because if we can't address this with what's going on, it's going to continue to plague our communities. And so, as the sheriff, I'm saying that, I'll be asking for the community's involvement. This is not a time when we need to separate and split down the middle. This is a time when we need to find common ground to work together, and we can do it to identify and solve problems within our communities. That means that those police officers are going to be asked to get outside those squad cars, talk to the people as people, not just as officers, but get to know the people, find out some of their concerns, right? And address them head on. And guess what? To those guys who are not doing the job and bringing the bad name to the department, yeah, they're going to have to go. They're going to simply have to go, and we're going to be looking to hire new people who are willing to step in those shoes and do a better job. And remember, in this job, you have to have a love for people. You have to want to help people. And so that's what we're looking for, is officers who will come in and have a more positive attitude, be more professional, and who want to come and live in the community to identify with the people in which they serve. And so you should not be afraid to live in the community in which you work in, right? And so that's what we want to try and to put in place when we come through that door. And so as sheriff, we do have some plans. My team and I have worked out some plans, some budgets. So we kind of know what that will look like and how we intend to hit the ground running and address those issues. We want to make sure that we're expanding on training, education, and community orientation, a lot more than has been done in the past. So that is an important piece of what being the sheriff is. I talked to some folks last week who told me that they really thought that the sheriff's job was only to, maintain the jails, serve civil papers, and occasionally, pop out now and then. And listen, the bottom line of it is that the sheriff is the top cop in the county. Having police departments is a caveat, if you would, to assisting the sheriff, because that means he doesn't have to run from call to call. And as a result of that, that means that, people can get a faster response. But make no mistake, if there wasn't a police department at any city, the sheriff would be required to provide safety for those communities, because he's responsible for the safety in the entire community, which means that it's his responsibility to make sure that the police departments and their officers are following the standards that the state has set forth for police officers under his guidance. And when that doesn't happen, the whole, well, that's a different police department, does not float, because as the sheriff, it is your responsibility to make sure that those guys are doing their jobs and holding them accountable. And when they're not, then you need to be removing those folks and putting new measures in place to ensure that those problems are getting rectified. And so that's kind of the feel of what the sheriff should be doing. And that's what the sheriff will be expected to do. And that's what I'll do when I'm elected as your sheriff here in Hennepin County. Remember, it's important that you go to my website, right? Go to my website, click on banksforsheriffs.com, find out a little bit about me. Remember to make sure you donate on there, right? Because I'm seeing a lot of likes, and I really appreciate all the likes, guys, and the thumbs up. But we really need you to donate, because, as I said, we're a grassroots campaign. In order for us to get the word out more, we need bucks. We need people to help us with the volunteering. Those volunteers sometimes expect to get paid. And there's other expenditures that come along with running for the campaign. So your dollars and your buy-in helps us get able to do that. We got some nice shirts here for you, so you can get you one of these shirts for $20 and help to support the campaign. We got some nice flyers for you to get out and things like that. So just remember, be a part and get involved. Come help us out. This is your push. This is your chance to really make a difference in your community. By doing so, stepping up and voting me in as the new sheriff of Hennepin County. This is a unique time for us, in that Hennepin County has never had a sheriff of color, and so I would love to be Hennepin County's first sheriff. And for some of you who don't know, I've been the first Black chief in quite a few communities. I've been the first Black officer in a few communities. I'm pretty familiar with kind of what position that puts me in, but also my training and experience also allows me to be able to work cross paths with different organizations, federal organizations, to get things done. And so, a lot of times what it takes is someone who's not afraid to take it on the chin, for the well-being of the community. I'm never going to miss words. I'm going to tell you exactly what's on my mind. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. And that's just kind of where we stand as, and the way I do things. If there's information that needs to get out to the community, we're not going to be holding back information. When it comes to video, we're going to get that video out, because the video is only going to show exactly what took place. It's not going to choose sides. We still have time to go back and do investigations and figure out exactly what led up to what. But we do want people to have a real understanding as what took place when it comes to officer-involved use of force issues. And for a long time, it's been, well, as long as we think that we're going to come out looking good, we can get that video out as fast as possible, because it shows us doing the right thing. But when there's something questionable, it takes almost an act of Congress to get the video released, and then there's all these excuses. And in most cases, it's pre-edited video. So it's important that we're being honest and upfront and transparent with what's going on at these agencies, and that we're holding people accountable. The whole concept of running for this office was because I wanted to make a positive difference. I wanted to make sure that, we're not going to continue to have homicides in our communities that are going unsolved. We're going to start making some arrests when it comes to these homicides. These are people's loved ones that we're losing, and we need to stop the bleeding. We really need to stop that bleeding. We need to get a major hold on where these guns are coming from in our community. And we need to hold people accountable when they're selling guns illegally to juveniles. And we need to make sure that people understand that we're not trying to destroy your right to bear arms, but at the same time, I don't think you need a fully automatic machine gun in the inner city community. So it's important that we look at, what are these guns being used for, the ages that we're issuing these guns to, the way that they're being obtained. We don't want to infringe on those who have gun rights to hunt and fish and things of that nature and protect their homes. But we do want to make sure that people are being responsible with firearms, and that there aren't juveniles running around with fully automatic handguns that are killing innocent people on a daily basis, and it's gone swept under the carpet. It's becoming too common for the community when someone fires gunfire that we just go, oh man, they're shooting again. That needs to be a surprise to us all, and we need to be going, oh my God, we need to do something about that, and then we do need to do something about that. So yeah, I'm concerned that we've had a large number of homicides go unsolved. I'm concerned that we've talked about not having manpower and haven't addressed that issue. I know that some agencies are looking to try and do some hiring, but it is important that we talk with the community about how they feel about not having law enforcement protection in their community. So, when we talk about transparency and accountability, these are main things that we need to be talking about, making sure we're getting good officers in our community, making sure they come in a lot of cases from the community, that the community is reflected in the department, and make sure that the people feel comfortable with the folks who are serving them, right? And let's get to protect and serve in the back of those squad cars, right? And who says that we can't give people a ride home because they've had too much to drink at the bar? I mean, why are we not doing that? If a guy has had too much to drink at the bar, why would you wait till they got in the car and pull up behind them to take them to jail, when you could have just offered the guy a ride home and got him home safely in lieu of beating him in a DWI? So it's not, entrapment. You need to just simply do the job of the community. The community officer is looking for ways to not arrest people, to make things better and work with the community. Of course, there are going to be times when we have to make arrests, but we should be firm and fair, right? And at the same time, think about, is this an arrestable moment or a teachable moment? I guarantee you that people are going to respect you more for those opportunities when you gave them a teachable moment. Right. And I guarantee that those kids are going to respect you more when they realize, oh my God, he knows my mom, because they're going to fear you're their mom more than they fear you. So it's important that we're talking about what that looks like in our community, and we're working together for that collaborative effort. And if everybody's talking to the police, no one's necessarily snitching. We're all being good citizens. And guess what? The police are informed on things that are happening in your community, and they can better react, prevent, and resolve issues in that community. So it's important. Again, for those who don't know, I want to take this time to thank you guys for joining me, because I appreciate everybody popping in and chiming in. Remember, if you got some questions, go ahead and throw it in the inbox. I'll do my best to try to answer it. My name's Joseph Banks. I'm your host. My co-host Antoine Beeks couldn't be here, but we're moving forward and rolling anyways. And so for those of you who don't know, Antoine is our co-host, and he's also a former Minneapolis police officer of 15 years. He's also a firearms instructor and the head of Black Knight Security. So it's important that you guys get involved and get to know who he is. If you got some things you want to know about firearms and some training, he helps out with the concealed carry permits for civilians as well. So feel free to look him up and get his information. My name's Joe Banks. I am running for Hennepin County Sheriff. So you can reach me at 763-221-4724. That's 763-221-4724. You can also reach me at banksforsheriff.com or joelawman@hotmail.com. joelawman@hotmail.com. That's JOELAWMAN@hotmail.com. So that's my little spiel on the day. Remember that we're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5. Make sure you jump in and follow us on YouTube, because we're streaming live on YouTube every week. Also, we're on Twitter now, so make sure you follow us on Twitter. And just get involved. This is your chance to follow our grassroots campaign all the way through to the finish line. Remember, we can do this with you, your help, with your voice. If you're really tired of wondering, what kind of police officer you got in the community, or you want to see a positive change in your community and see things change, I'm definitely your guy. Definitely your guy. Get involved. Be a part of this. Get yourself one of these nice shirts. We got some flyers, hats, all that good stuff. Get involved and make sure that you're being a part of this campaign. This is a chance to change history by getting Hennepin County their first African-American sheriff who cares about the people. And so let's push this as far as we can get it. Let's get to that finish line. Let's win this election. Let's make these positive changes. Let's make your community better. And so that's what my intention is to do. The sweet part of it is, guys, I've been at this for a little while, so I've already got a plan to bring changes to the community that are going to be positive. I'm going to be open to hearing what it is you have to say and trying to get things that you want done in place while holding all officers accountable. We're going to be asking that, officers have separate insurance similar to that of malpractice insurance. Therefore, when officers are involved in use of force incidents, the community won't be forced to bear the full cost of that. Taxes won't keep going up. And so we're going to be making some changes. We're going to make sure that there's a community council that both has community members and law enforcement, so we can have a clear transparency and use of force issues. We're going to put a deputy in each one of the 36 police departments to make sure we're getting real-time information from those departments back to the sheriff department. And so there's not going to be this sneakiness that's going on in the departments anymore. We're not going to have police departments that are investigating their own use of force issues, because we're going to be there for that. Those investigations will be done by the sheriff department or the BCA, but we're going to make sure that we have an outside pair of eyes looking at that, as well as a civilian community member to ensure that there's definite transparency. And I think this is what we need, right? We want to make sure that we're reaching out to the youth in the community, finding those alternative ways to solve issues outside of just taking people to jail. So this is going to be a collaborative effort, and community policing is just going to be exactly that again, community-oriented police, right? Law enforcement looking to identify and solve problems within the community with the aid of the community, right? We want people to understand that law enforcement works for you. And remember, folks, anything that you want to see enforced, the community can push for that, and that can happen. If you want to see something change, you have the option of doing that too. Like I said, I really want people to think about coming up with some bills that will bear the name of George Floyd. In light of everything that's happened, I think that Minnesota should have a few new laws or policies on the books that bear the name of Mr. Floyd, who actually loss of life changed the way people see law enforcement throughout the United States and around the world. And I think that's something very important that we should always think about in terms of what really drew attention to issues of use of force when it comes to law enforcement in our communities. We cannot afford any more issues like Terrence Franklin, who lost his life in Minneapolis in the process of being arrested by the Minneapolis police, who no one ever was able to determine whether or not it was a justifiable shoot, other than the fact that Minneapolis police investigated their own shoot and came to the conclusion that they didn't do anything wrong. The BCA decided they didn't want to take a second look at it after it was referred from the sheriff, from the Hennepin County prosecutor for a second look. So, these are issues that people have to take a look at, because that concerns me. When cops can investigate their own crimes or own use of force issues, then that transparency isn't there. And of course, that's definitely an issue. So, this is something that we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on and paying attention to. Remember, your word definitely counts, right? And if we don't get involved in the community, we can't see that change. Running for sheriff is a big deal, right? That is a big deal. We're going to get a lot of people who feel as though they have been in law enforcement for a while, and that's what we need. And we do need people who have experience in law enforcement, but we need somebody like myself who's compassionate when it comes to the people, who cares about the people, and understands that law enforcement consists of wearing a few different hats other than just the badge and the gun. We're that comforter, right? We're that counselor. We're an understanding mom when mom can't be found. And so this is an important thing that we have to look at when we're doing this job. We have to be willing to get involved in a positive fashion. Remember, people, when they call law enforcement, they expect things to get better, not worse. And so are we slowing things down enough to make sure that we're taking every opportunity to secure and protect life? Why are we reaching for our guns first? I understand there's violence out there in the world, but there's other tools other than violence in our communities. And so if we have that time to have a conversation with people, let's take some cover, get protection, have a conversation, and let's preserve life. And so that's what we need to do. I want our cops to work with the community to identify where these guns are coming from and try and get as many guns off the street as we can. We're not going to get them all, but we want people to get to the point where they can go out and enjoy themselves without the fear of being shot. So I see that we're getting to the top of the hour yet again. And as you know, we start, middle, and end our show with, the backpack. And what the backpack consists of is making sure that you have your driver's license and insurance with you in the car before you get in that car. Place it above the visor so it's easily accessible. That way, if you're pulled over by law enforcement, they're not going to suspect you of reaching for a weapon. It's going to be easily accessible. You're going to have access to it. Remember to stay calm. Ask polite questions. Allow the officer to get through his spiel. Even if the officer is rude to you, Put in your mind frame that, you know what, I'm going to let you get away with this. I'll deal with it at a safer time. And remember, the most important goal of that is what? To get home to your family. Same thing if you're walking down the street and you're stopped or encountered by law enforcement. Make sure you have your ID or driver's license where it's easily accessible. Make sure that you stay calm. Keep your hands where they can be seen. Now, notice that throughout this, I'm always saying make sure that you stay calm. And this is because a lot of people are telling their kids or their loved one that you don't have to listen to the police. And really, when a police officer asks you a question, there is a legal obligation to comply. However, because of certain things that have happened in our past or negative contact with law enforcement, people feel the need to become more aggressive. And just remember that since these cops don't know you, it becomes a safety issue, and they're forced to kind of deal with you in a more aggressive manner. So why give them that, right? Stay calm. If the cop does something wrong, remember the goal is to survive it, go home to your loved ones, and then we can address it afterwards. But always keep in mind the goal is to make sure that you get home safe to your loved ones. So that's my important piece. Real quick, one more time before we get out of here, I do want to say that we want to send condolences out to the families who've had folks died through gunfire. We also want to remember the fact that Trinity, 8 years old, Davion, who was shot, 10 years old, and Anya, who was 6 years old, and they were shot and killed, and Davion was, seriously wounded. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to Crime Stoppers at www.crimestoppers.org. That's Crime Stoppers at www.org, or 1-800-222-8477, 1-800-222-8477, or Minneapolis Violent Crime Division at 612-673-2941. That's 612-673-2941. So this is important information. Remember, there's also a $185,000 reward leading to the arrest or prosecution of these individuals who are responsible for killing these young children. So as we know, like I said, any loss of life is terrible, but when you lose children, it's that much more terrible. Condolences out to the family who lost a young man over at the Ridgefield High School, and also to the young gentleman who's fighting for his life, who was also a victim in that gun violence. Like I said, gun violence plagues our community. We want to get in front of that, guys. We want to come together and make a difference. Our first goal here at the Sheriff Department will be to reduce crime in Hennepin County with the aid of the people. That's our first priority goal: reduce crime, reduce violence in our community. Second goal is transparency and accountability, making sure that people are accountable for what they're doing and how they're serving in our community, and ensuring that our officers understand that we can, give some discretion, arrestable or teachable moment. So those are the important things. Remember, my name is Joe Banks. I'm the host of Let's Talk About It. We're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5. We're streaming on YouTube, and also you can follow us on Twitter. Remember, you can find out more about me and my campaign at Banks for Sheriff. That's BANKS, the number 4, sheriff.com. We're looking for some donations and volunteers. Remember, you can donate on Cash App, on the Facebook, or on the webpage. So make sure that we're getting those in. We're always looking for volunteers to help get the word out. You can get yourself one of these nice shirts here again. One more shot at it right there, one of those nice shirts. And so make sure you're getting involved. We're always trying to do our best to serve the community. I'm out here every day on the front lines, making sure that we do our best. Real quick, I want to send shouts out to some of those other grassroots organizations like Twin Sisters Recovery Project, A Mother's Love, Push for Peace, Mad Dads, and other organizations. So a Turning Point, these guys are out here every day. Reverend McAfee, Bishop Howell, and these guys at Shiloh Temple, who are doing their best on the front lines to keep people safe. Again, my name's Joe Banks. And this is Let's Talk About It. We're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5, and we just talked about it. Thanks and have a good night.